Good morning, everyone. I can see a lot of attendees joining at the moment. It's just hit 10 o'clock, so I'm just going to wait another couple of moments until the numbers creep up a bit further. We're expecting around about 400 attendees today, so I'll just wait a little bit longer as everyone's joining at the 10 o'clock mark, aren't we? I can see a couple of comments. Are you able to see the screen clearly there? I can see one person saying that they can't hear anything yet. If anyone else is having the same problems, or should I say if anyone can see the screen, can hear me, would you mind? Thank you. I can see a few people can see and hear. Okay, thank you very much.
Hi guys, just to confirm, the webinar will be recorded. I just saw the question on the chat there.
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, we're a couple of moments in now, so we'll make a start now that I know that everybody can see the screen and can hear. So welcome to this webinar. We've named it Back to Basics for Technical Qualifications in 2021 and 22. My name's Liz English. I'm a quality team manager in the quality delivery team at City and Guilds. We have a colleague of mine called Hannah McCardle, who's joined us as well today. She's just helping with any questions that we do get in that chat, in the questions box. You're all in listen-only mode, just to let you know that you'll remain muted throughout, but if you do have any questions, pop them into that chat, and at various stages throughout, if it's relevant to the section that we've just covered, we'll try and address the questions there, or there's a section at the very end for questions. So let me just click my screen. So what we'll be covering in this webinar is, well, quite a bit really. We've got the support teams and resources. I just want to make sure that you're aware of the resources that we have for technical qualifications, give you an overview of technical qualifications themselves. I do feel like we have a lot of resources, a lot of support, that we cover a lot of the same information in a lot of our webinars and presentations that you have with technical advisors. So a lot of this will repeat itself, but I'm aware that we've sent this webinar invitation out to all new centres, all existing centres who've been with us for about 4 years. So I just want to make sure that we draw a line in the sand from what we've had in the last couple of years for centre assessed grades, teacher assessed grades, and that we are all back to basics and delivering technical qualifications as business as usual for this year. So I'll go through in section 3 qualification approvals as well, the quality assurance model for technical qualifications, a bit on employee involvement, adaptations for 2022, because we do still have some provision for any adaptations around COVID-19 because we're still impacted by it, aren't we? So there's a guide for that on the website I'd like to point out. The key dates for this year's delivery, the booking process for the assessments and exams. Looking at the time of year that we're at, just starting off in November, we'll be looking towards the spring and moderation visits for some qualifications. Preparations for the moderation portal, because we intend to use that again this year. We used that a couple of years ago, but didn't touch it for CAG and TAG. So I do want to start to familiarise yourselves with it. It isn't training on the moderation portal, but it is just to introduce you to it, to get that thought in your minds about how to prepare for it and the evidence that needs to be submitted to the portal. A small section on communicating with your moderator throughout the year. And again, just going back to the resources that we have, further support that we have, and question and answer session at the end. So do pop any questions into that chat as we go through. Hannah will help me to manage any of the questions that we come through, if any are relevant to the sections that we look at. But like I say, at the end, we do have that question and answer session. So the support teams and resources, well, you'll be familiar, hopefully, if you're not already familiar with the Technicals Quality team. They are your go-to. That's the team that I work with. The telephone number is on your screen there, 0300 303 5352. And one of the options that you can select when you dial that number is for the Technicals Quality team directly. For all Technicals qualifications, any T levels as well, we deal with technicals. Available Monday to Friday, 8:30 till 5. And the things that we support with is just the general queries around the aspect of the delivery, the assessment, moderation of technical qualifications, where you get the documents, where you can find the information, general queries about the qualifications, the timeline, the registrations, bookings, and the process, but we don't actually help with the physical registrations and the bookings. That is centre support. I'll show you that on the next screen. Technical Qualification Approvals, the QAPs, we do support with that as well. We will process the QAPs and the exam timelines as well. The moderation processes we support, we are the go-between between the moderators and centres. So we do help with the moderation processes, the timelines around that, and any support and guidance that you will need with the moderation portal. I've just seen a question in the chat there. Yes, we will have the slides. We'll be uploading these onto the website afterwards, actually, but you will get the recording of the presentation afterwards in the email. Anyone who's been an attendee on this webinar will get the recording. For centre support, they're the team that help you really with the qualification information, walled garden support, how to place the orders for registrations and bookings, and any technical issues that you might have, and specifically around the exams, really Evolve exam support. So they're available on that number on the screen there, 01924 930 800, available an hour longer than us, an hour and a half longer, Monday to Friday, 8 o'clock till 6 o'clock. Okay, so there's a slight difference between the two teams, but in terms of the content of the qualification, if you need any support with technicals specifically, do come to the Technicals Quality team to help with that. But centre support will be the go-to for your registrations, your bookings, any technical issues or Evolve issues, exams, etc. I will make reference to a lot of our documents that are on the website within this webinar. You can see on the screen here a selection of the different documents, and they're all on the resource and support page, which I'll show you on the next screen. If you haven't seen that already, really encourage you to become totally familiar with the resources that are available. This Marking Moderation Centre Guide, I mean, it says what it is really, isn't it? What the name is on the tin. So marking and moderation, what centres are responsible for. The Teaching, Learning and Assessment Guide is obviously about the teaching, the learning part of it, and how you actually do that teaching, the learning recommendations within that. There's a guide for the moderation portal as well when you do come to use that. Later in the year, there are some centres currently doing a resit autumn series and needing to use the moderation portal. So I presume that they have been using that guide. Our team has been helping with some centres using that guide in the current assessment series for the autumn. But when it comes to the end of the year, it's really important that those of you who need to use the moderation portal will be able to access this and be able to use the moderation portal effectively. There's a guide that we produced a few years ago. It's still relevant for how to book your assessments for technical qualifications, and there's a guidance document for employer involvement as well. So I really encourage you to have a look at those documents if you haven't already accessed them, and where to find them is on the resources and support page on the website. So if you go on the City and Guilds website, technicals page, there's a resources and support page. When I click on that, you'll see the blue box at the bottom highlighting the teaching and learning resources on that page, which drops down, and you have a lot of different documents and resources there that you can use. You'll also see highlighted on the bottom right there, just want to highlight this, that if you're on the technicals pages on the website, you might see the chat function. I think that this is really useful. You can use this web chat as opposed to sending an email, as opposed to calling us. And our team will respond to that. It flags for our team to answer that live. Again, that's open during the hours of the phone lines, but it sometimes is more useful for some centres who might not need to ring to get that information. So do make use of that. It's really, really useful. So just noticed another question in the chat there about QAPs. I'll come on to that in a moment, Wayne. QAPs, yes, they do get applied for via walled garden. It's just like any typical qualification approval. But yeah, I will come on to the qualification approval stages in the coming slides. So an overview, you've probably seen this a lot. What is a technical qualification? So I'm sorry if I'm banging the drum that you've come across lots of times, but technical qualifications are a range of qualifications designed for 14 to 19-year-olds. They're an equally rigorous vocational alternative to general qualifications, and they're all supported by industry, and they very much are very supported by industry. They meet the requirements of the DfE categories of technical award, technical certificate, the tech level qualifications. They're recognised by the DfE as a high quality vocational qualification, attracting performance table points. There's a link to the performance tables there for schools and colleges. And like I say, they are supported by industry, very much so. The technical qualifications have been developed in collaboration with several employers, including Bosch, EDF, RSPCA, to ensure that they meet the employer's needs and standards. And the structure of technical qualifications is designed to encourage the focus on teaching and learning rather than the assessment of those various teaching units. Candidates will be expected to be taught and to develop the knowledge and skills required to achieve the learning outcomes, so that at the point of assessment they're able to deal with whatever the assessment requires of them. You'll see that obviously from that synoptic assignment, rather than there being specific teaching focuses on the various teaching units, it's all that holistic assignment at the end, a holistic assessment. And the learners they're given a challenge within the synoptic assignment of dealing with a real life working situation. So the content of technical qualifications is therefore designed in such a way to ensure that the knowledge and understanding is directly relevant to practical or occupational problems. I think you'll agree that when you do look at the synoptic assignments and the structure of a technical qualification, it does help with these learners to develop those skills and their understanding of real life situations in an employment situation. So for each technical qualification, you'll hopefully know that there's at least one end externally assessed theory exam. The questions for which will be drawn from critical knowledge across the mandatory qualification content, and the grades are pass, merit and distinction. So I say there's at least one theory exam because some qualifications do run over 2 years, and that means that they'll potentially have 2 theory exams for that. There's also a substantial synoptic end assignment that requires the candidate to be able to draw from and apply the knowledge, skills and understanding from the breadth of the mandatory qualification content in an integrated way. Again, the pass, merit and distinction. They are also graded at fail as well, should a learner fail that theory exam, or should, when we calculate the marks for the synoptic assignment, should those marks fall below that pass grade boundary, then yes, you can fail that synoptic assignment depending on the performance of the learners. Again, depending on the qualification, there may be some additional exams and assignments depending on the nature of the qualification. You have to have a look in the specific qualification handbooks. You'll know that when we look at the tech awards, they're a lot smaller in terms of the qualification content and the qualification structure. But you have some large qualifications where there's 1,080 guided learning hours over 2 years, and there are lots of exams, lots of tests, assignments, optional assignments within it. So it does depend on the qualification that you're looking at. For Key Stage 5, there's employer involvement. It's a mandatory component of the delivery and assessment of Key Stage 5 technical qualifications for those 16 to 19-year-olds, and we do external quality assurance of that component as well within City and Guilds, just to make sure that the learners have had that involvement with employers. So I find this visual quite helpful, the assessment structure. So it is the assessment strategy is similar to GCSEs and A-levels. It's around that summative assessment at the end of the course, allowing centres to create coherent learning programmes. So for each technical qualification, again, we've got that substantial synoptic end assignment, looking at 60% of the core content of that qualification there. And on the right-hand side, you can see that 40% of the value of that final qualification is the end theory examination. That's all the critical knowledge across the mandatory qualification content. So again, these two components are in every single technical qualification, the synoptic and the theory exam. But depending on the different qualifications, there may be other units that you'll have within it as well, and perhaps that employer involvement for Key Stage 5. So the assessment strategy for the qualifications, for technical qualifications, was a change from previous qualifications on the QCF framework, which was aimed to support a transfer of knowledge and skills by crediting candidates at a unit level, in order that credits from one qualification could contribute to the related qualifications if those ones contained same or similar units. However, for technical qualifications, on the other hand, it was aimed to change this, and in a similar move to GCSEs and A-levels, it was moving from that unit-based assessment of candidates' knowledge and skills over the course to a summative assessment at the end of the course. Again, all elements are mandatory to achieve that technical qualification, but again, employer involvement is just for Key Stage 5. Only the synoptic assignment and theory exam contribute towards that final grade. So if you're thinking about some qualifications where there's optional units, the grades within those optional units don't contribute to that final grade. It's just the synoptic and the theory exam. The boundaries for the assessment grades are set through what's known as the awarding processes at the back end of the year. That usually takes place within July. The grades for the individual assessments are then weighted, combined, and give the learner that overall grade for the qualification. There's a points-based system. There's details within each qualification handbook for that. But each year we don't know where the boundaries are for the grades for the synoptic and theory exam. We can't let centres know. We don't know where those grade boundaries lie. So even if you came to us asking, I think my learner is going to have 30 out of 60 for a synoptic, what grade is that going to equate to? We don't know. We don't know until July. That's because of the awarding process that takes place at the back end of the year. So the assessment structure, again, sorry to keep repeating myself on here, but you can see here that on the left-hand side you have the synoptic and theory exam, and that's in every single technical qualification. Other qualifications may have mandatory units. I'm thinking, again, animal management here, larger qualifications such as where you have the biology units, the health and safety exams. These are added on to the qualification. Optional units as well, maybe in that qualification for the technicals. And you may have the Key Stage 5 employer involvement as well. So in addition to that core synoptic assignment and theory exam, those additional centre assessed assignments, depending on the nature of the qualification, the details are in the qualification handbook. And those are mandatory units that have to be completed in order to meet the rules of combination, or there may be optional units which can be selected by the learner, but a particular number of units or the value of guided learning hours will need to be completed in order to meet those rules of combination. For Key Stage 5 only, the employer involvement, it is mandatory for Key Stage 5, and it's subject to external quality assurance by City and Guilds. So we'll go on to shortly onto booking assignments and the rules of combination, etc. But it is really, really important. You'll hear me repeat this again and again. It's important to really know the rules of combination and which units your learners need to complete in order to achieve that qualification if you want them to get that in August this year. So again, you can see down the middle there, the synoptic assignment, the theory exam, employer involvement, and the additional mandatory and optional units. So the synoptic assignment, it's marked by centres. we provide that Synoptic assignment from City and Guilds. We provide you with the content of it, what needs to be assessed. It's marked by the centre and it's externally moderated by our moderator, and again 60% of that final grade. The theory exam is externally set by us, it's externally marked by us, and it contributes to 40% of that final grade. For employer involvement, Key Stage 5, centres develop the employer involvement programme, so getting in touch with employers, bringing them into the centre, developing a programme where they get involved in the delivery of the qualification. We ask for evidence to be submitted to us at the end of the year to demonstrate that it has been completed, that you have had employers involved in the delivery of that qualification, and we quality assure it. But remember that it doesn't contribute to that final grade, but it does have to be submitted in terms of the moderation portal, claiming the unit for that in order to get the qualification. It has to be completed. And if the qualification includes any additional mandatory or optional units, again, these are set by us in City and Guilds externally, and they're moderated by our moderators. And again, they don't contribute to the final grade, but if they're part of the rules of combination, then you have to complete them. The learner has to complete them, claim them, and it'll form part of that final qualification overall. Okay, I can see a few questions that have been popping up. So the slides, we will update the website, and I'll get the website updated with these so you can access them from the website and the resource and support. They won't be part of the email that goes out to everybody. You'll get the copy of the presentation, the recording, but not the slides themselves. That's for Fazal, who's asked that question. To what extent is employer involvement quality assured? Is this the signatures from employers? I'll come on to that. I actually have that section on employer involvement, but City and Guilds will take a look at what kind of employer involvement you've used, whether it's meaningful. The guide for that will explain what meaningful activities are for employer involvement. We do ask for some evidence that those activities have taken place. For example, if a learner is doing work placement, you could have some testimonials, you could have some registers of attendance, and that's how we just assure that actually did take place with the employers. Dean, I presume you're asking how many hours is required for employer involvement. It's not in terms of numbers of hours for that particular unit. It's around the meaning. Has it been meaningful from that employer? Again, I'll come on to that shortly, but it's not in terms of hours. It's just whether the activity with an employer has been really useful, has contributed. Does it come under the Department of Education category of meaningful activities with an employer? And Dean, sorry, Dean, you just followed on. It doesn't state the required hours in the handbook. That's right. It doesn't have that. So, for example, if it's a hair and beauty qualification where there's employer involvement, there's not that requirement for a certain number of hours for employer involvement. It's just, has there been activities taking place that have been meaningful? It could be a bit of a confusion when it comes to some of the land-based qualifications where there is a certain number of hours for a work experience unit. But that is in fact a different unit that needs to be completed for that, not employer involvement. And Shelley, you've said, do you need to provide the actual evidence for the employer involvement, i.e. the physical attendance registers, or just state the type of evidence that you do have? We'd like you to keep those registers. We'd like you to have that as evidence. At the end of the year on the moderation portal, you'll upload a document to say what kinds of activities your learners have done, and provide some form of evidence that it did take place. So like you say, for example, the physical attendance registers, get a scan of it if you can, get some document to state that it did take place, and that will support the evidence to provide on the moderation portal at the end of the year. Okay. So if there are any questions further, I will keep coming back and having a look at questions as we go through.
Sorry, Liz, one's just literally popped on now from Steve.
Yeah, go on.
Level 2 catering 6100-20 used to be 30 hours. Is is this still viable if meaningful?
Right, to be honest, unless I looked at a qualification handbook specifically now, I couldn't tell you. I'd have to have a good look at that, and I would recommend you speak to the technical advisor just to make sure on that. What I would say is that the employer involvement unit on the whole, like I say, I can't speak for specific qualifications, just in case I'm slightly wrong. I would have to refer back to the handbook. But on the whole, those employer involvement activities, it's just whether it's meaningful. So if it does say that an employer involvement activity needs to be 30 hours as a work placement in a hotel catering department, and you have to have the evidence of those 30 hours, then that's what the qualification handbook will state and tell you to do for that unit. But I can't speak specifically for different qualifications, like I say. Thanks, Steve. You just said, okay, thanks.
Is employee engagement the same as employee involvement?
Engagement? Yeah. Well, I'll just keep going back to the term employer involvement because that is the unit that the learners need to complete. Employer engagement, I guess there might be a terminology thing around that, but again, for all Key Stage 5 qualifications, you do have to have some involvement with employers, whether you get an employer in, for example, to do a guest lecture, to demonstrate the use of different products. Oh, just got another question popped in there. Yep. But employer involvement is just around that one unit to meet the rules of combination to claim this whole qualification, if that makes sense, and get those employers involved in the delivery of that qualification.
So Danny was just mentioning that he has contacted the technical team regarding documentation for 0172030, saying it still has a health check form on from last year, which is not needed this year, I believe. I don't know if you can see that one, Liz.
Yeah, hang on a second, just scrolling down. So a slightly different query from what has been covered so far. However, the documentation for the 0172030 recording forms for the Synoptic Assignment still has the health check form on from last year. I had contact with the technicals team, but I've not heard back yet. Well, okay, Danny, sorry to. I will move on. What I would suggest is pop your query back into the technicals quality team and just reflag that again. It'll be one that's potentially sitting with the assessment team that we've had to query because we don't provide the documents. So I'll just say flag it back up again and chase that one up. Thanks, Danny. Okay, I will move on now onto quality assurance because I'll probably repeat myself a lot more when it comes to employer involvement now. So the quality assurance model that we have, so this is quite wordy, I'll warn you in advance, but the quality assurance of the components of a technical qualification, we have obviously the synoptic assignments. They are all moderated. This involves the moderator sampling centre marking to check whether it's accurate and in line with the national standards for the qualification. And what could happen, where necessary, adjustments might be made to the centre's marking to align it with those standards. I always view the moderator as the principal moderator as holding the standard of what we see as the pass mark, what we see as the distinction mark, the grades. And so they're the ones who are checking whether the centres have understood that marking grid and have applied the marks correctly. Once the centre's marking has been completed, the moderators remark a representative sample of the candidate's evidence for each synoptic assignment to determine how closely the centre's marking aligns with the national standard. And that national standard, again, is what our assessment teams, the principal moderators, have decided, you know, this is where we see the pass mark to be. And this dictates whether we accept the centre's marks, and if not, by how much they should be adjusted in order to bring them into alignment with the standard. So moderators are employed by city and guilds to undertake this work. Quality assurance is maintained through the principal moderator being assigned to all subject areas. So, well, a principal moderator assigned to all subject areas. So one principal moderator for animal, one principal moderator for hairdressing, one for barbering. They're responsible for ensuring that there's a consistent and common standard of marking within their team of moderators. So there's commonly, I don't know, for animal management, we have a really large team of moderators. Within some of the qualifications, there might be 2 or 3 moderators working with a single principal moderator. Moderators attend a lot of training across the year, the generic training, subject-specific training, including the use of the marking grid. So they really get to understand that marking grid really thoroughly, and they understand where the marks should be sitting and how to standardize the learner's work that they see to understand where those marks should be. Moderators complete a standardization activity for each synoptic assignment that they're marking to ensure that they're marking accurately and consistently in line with the standards set by the principal moderator. So standardization takes place a lot. And moderators are regularly sampled throughout their marking period in May and June by the principal moderator or lead moderators to make sure that they are still constantly aligned to that standard as well. Spotted a question there about the practical elements of the synoptic. This is just about the marking of that, well, the marking of the whole synoptic assignment, not necessarily just the practical. We don't put marks on just that practical element of the synoptic SAM. The practical element of that synoptic contributes to the overall marks for that synoptic, but we don't put marks against just that practical element. So the marking that they do will be, or the marking that moderators do, is looking at all of that synoptic assignment, the tasks, the preparation tasks, the review tasks afterwards, and all of the documents that we'd get submitted to us as evidence. Now, further to the synoptic assignments. The moderation of centre marking for each synoptic assignment will have one of the 2 outcomes, really, that we'll accept the centre's marks. That's where centre marking is found to be within tolerance of the agreed national standard for the qualification. So if the moderator looks at the evidence and that's been provided by the learner, the written evidence, the assignment material that they've produced, and also the documented evidence that we receive from the centre, the practical observation form, the candidate record form, which we'll come on to later. If the moderator looks at that and says, yep, I can see how the centre has applied that marking grid, and I agree with the marks that have been allocated for these learners, then we'll accept those marks. If, however, we might adjust those marks where centre marking is found to be either too lenient or too harsh, or a combination of both. Sometimes we do see that, depending on the assessors or depending on how large the cohort is, how they've been assessed. Sometimes the centre can be lenient for some learners, harsher for others within a cohort. Now, what we'll do then is we'll make an adjustment to all the candidate results to bring them in line with that agreed national standard. If we have, we'll come across this later as well, it depends on the number of learners. We might just go down the route of saying, well, we've got a small cohort here, we've had them all remarked by the moderator, we'll look at the moderator's marks that we'll accept. Otherwise, if we've got a huge cohort of 200 learners, we can't ask a moderator to remark everything. And so we might, if we find that we can't adjust the marks fairly, we'll ask a moderator to do a full remark of all learners within that cohort. Now that is normally where internal standardization of marking has either not taken place or maybe it wasn't effective within a centre. And we might have to go back to, again, I'm thinking of the number 200 here, we might go back to a centre and ask for all evidence of all candidates to be uploaded for a full remark. Now, there's an asterisk there. The moderation process allows for the tolerance of mark difference between the moderator and centre marks. Tolerance is set on the understanding that marks given to a learner by a centre may reasonably vary from those that would have been given by the awarding organisation. That's on the basis that it may not be reasonable to expect exact agreement, so degree of variation may be allowed within a certain tolerance. So like I say, that we've got a tolerance that if a centre has marked a couple of marks here and there outside of what the moderator would have marked, we'd still accept those centre marks, but if they're outside of quite a broad tolerance, if a centre has marked, let's say a learner as, again, 30 marks, but the moderator has marked them at 40 marks, then you can see that there's a big difference between what the centre has said and the moderator has said. That tolerance is subject to change, by the way. I can't give you those, what that tolerance actually is.
Sorry, Liz, we've just got something in the chat from Emma White. Just saying, I've applied a couple of times to be an exam marker for my specialist area, which is hair and beauty, but I've never heard back. She really feels it would help improve and standardise the practice as a lone teacher assessor for the area. Do you know if we are currently looking to take any more exam markers, please? Take on more exam markers, please?
I can't speak for the exam markers, Emma. I can advise you that if you wanted to be a moderator, you could contact our associate moderator team and put in an application for that. For exam marking, I'm not sure who recruits for those, but I've got your name there. I'll find the information. I'll send it on to you if you want to become an examiner or put an application in at least. So I'm just making a note. So thanks for that. I can't answer that myself, though, I'm afraid. Oh yeah, final point on that, sorry. Where centre marks are within tolerance of moderator marks, centre marking is accepted. And where they're out of tolerance, City and Guilds will make necessary adjustments to align them with an agreed standard. And a question that's just popped in there from Arlen: if there's disagreement with grades with the moderator, is the centre able to appeal if standardisation has been done, etc.? Yes, of course. Now, you can appeal once you've got those results in August and you look at what has happened, if we've accepted centre, so not your question here, but if we've accepted centre marks, then there's no, you can't appeal because we've accepted what the centre has entered. If we have adjusted the marks at all, then yes, you can appeal, but you have to appeal on a Synoptic Assignment cohort level. So you're appealing all of those learners within that cohort, because the process of moderation is across a cohort of learners, and the sample of evidence that we've received, because it's about how marking has been applied across all of those learners and standardized across. Now, you can't appeal for one single individual learner within a synoptic cohort. You can for exams, because they're marked individually on the learner's answers within that exam, but not for a synoptic. It has to be on a cohort level. Do come to us if you have that query in the summer, Arlen, not a problem. So, quality assurance of other centre assess components. So away from synoptics now, in optional mandatory units, we do quality assure the assessment decisions from centres. They don't contribute to the overall qualification grades, but they are required components, and so we have to do external quality assurance for accuracy. Moderation, unlike moderation though, centres can revise the marking, resubmit marks following moderator feedback. So the moderator will likely look at what has been submitted, will see that, perhaps you've said that learners are distinction level for what you've submitted for the optional assignment or for mandatory units. And if the moderator says, I think you might need to relook at this, I don't feel like the grades have been applied correctly, can you have another look at how you've marked these optional units? That can be resubmitted, but only certain optional mandatory units are suitable for external quality assurance. Now, work experience units like health and safety tests, for example, work experience units or health and safety tests, for example, are not suitable.
Liz, we've also got Julia Greer in the chat, just saying, could she also request information about becoming a moderator and examiner?
Yep, would you mind making note of that one, Hannah?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
We'll get the information to you, Julia. So in terms of the centre assessed components, moderators will indicate to centres which units are acceptable for external review. So you'll know which units are okay to submit on the moderation portal in terms of the evidence to be looked at. Centres, you have to submit the grades for all optional units, by the way. The grades have to always go on, but the sample of evidence is only needed for one optional or mandatory unit per qualification. So moderators look at the sample of evidence. If centre assessment decisions are felt to be inaccurate, or maybe if relevant evidence is missing, moderators get in touch with centres along with any improvement actions, just to try and make sure that we've got the right grades that are going for checking the marking of those optional units and giving you some actions if we need to suggest any changes to it. Centres use that feedback to inform a remark of the assessment, perhaps applying the same process to other centre assessed components if appropriate. And centres may also choose to get candidates to resit or redo the assessment task if we found to have been failed. Any missing evidence must be uploaded as requested.
We've just got James Brooks. Yeah. For the technicals, are we able to get some examples of how the marking scheme is applied to some scenarios of work from photos? This is because I find the example comments in the marking and rationale is general and not specific enough to apply to the specific qualification.
So James, what I'll do later in this presentation, there's a few videos that I can recommend you watch. There's a lot of resources out there that you can take a look at how the marking scheme is applied. We've got a few videos that principal moderators have uploaded, have completed for us in the past about how the marking scheme is applied. And what I would recommend is getting in touch with your technical advisor as well about understanding the marking grid. And Colin, for your question there, I would want to see that. Can you include me with that? I presume that's the same question about seeing the marking scheme. It's just about understanding the marking grid and understanding how that's applied now. Principal moderators, like I say, have produced some videos in the past that would be really useful for you. So I'll point you in the direction of that. But otherwise, I would recommend getting in touch with technical advisors. Thanks, Colin. So moving on again to employer involvement, just to highlight the quality assurance for employer involvement. So we need to just, for Key Stage 5 qualifications, the evidence of the employer involvement requirement, we have to make sure that that requirement has been satisfactorily met. The deadline for uploading evidence for employer involvement, and that's the same as the centre assessed components. I'll show you the date and the deadlines later in the presentation. Centres need to submit an outcome for the candidates. That basically is, have they passed? Is it a pass for that unit that the learner has been involved in employer involvement activities? We need to see an employer involvement planner and tracker. There's a template on the website, and a sample of evidence to demonstrate that the candidates have met the minimum requirement. So, for example, attendance registers for the candidates. And again, I'll point out in the employer involvement centre section, there's the guidance that will follow, but there's more detail within that document on the website. Oh, sorry, I'll just go back. The approval applications. So what I just wanted to highlight here, we're in November. Centres will have started delivery of technical qualifications for this year. So we're no longer accepting any qualification approval applications for any technicals that are being delivered this year. You should have already had your approval if you're delivering it this year. Any applications received moving forward will be processed and you'll have approval for September 2022 delivery. And that's just because, as you can imagine, we're into November. We've had a couple of months already of delivery. And also we've got the deadline for registering the learners, which was the 31st of October. So if you haven't already had that approval, if you haven't already registered your learners, if you've already been delivering to your learners, then unfortunately you shouldn't have been delivering without that approval, and we can only accept any applications for 2022 going forward. So those approval applications for technicals are on the whole approved by the internal City and Guild Technicals quality team. As long as we have enough information provided on that QAP form, we just need to know about the resources, who's involved in the delivery of the qualification. Do you have the required kind of physical resources, salons? Do you have the workshops available to use? Now, the only exception to this in terms of who does that approval is for land-based technical qualifications, and we still need an approval activity from a City and Guilds EQA. That can take up to 30 working days. That's a requirement for just specifically for land-based qualifications. Again, for Key Stage 5 technical qualifications, there are a couple of questions on that QAP, 4.5 and 4.6, and that's specifically around the employer involvement component. It's quite important. Our team will send that back to centres if we haven't got that completed. Well, I don't mean send back. We'll require further information if that's not already on the QAP. The questions are around the types of employer involvement that you intend to use, really, and how they'll be documented. So just some detail, like we have a range of employers lined up, we have a range of salons where our learners are going to go in and do some work experience, and we're going to get some registers of attendance signed by the centres. Just how are you planning to do that? It's our sense check to understand that you understand the requirements of the employer involvement component. And yeah, again, so you can see your approved technical qualifications on walled garden within the quality portal. So you can have a look on the quality portal user guide for any further support if you want to have a look at those. So again, one of the questions earlier is, are any QAPs through walled garden? So yes, it is. Through walled garden, you can see the updates on where they are in terms of processing on walled garden. Okay, so I feel like I'm talking a lot about employer involvement here, but employer involvement, key part of Key Stage 5, technical qualifications, giving learners that opportunity to work with real employers, a real workplace, helps to bridge the gap between education and employers. And although it doesn't form part of the overall grade, it's a mandatory component. So centres need to plan and track the activities which learners complete across the delivery period in conjunction with employers. A planner and tracker is available on the website. There's also an exemplar copy as well, just with some suggestions on how you might complete it, I should highlight as well. But the tracker that you can use is on the website to support you with that. We recommend that you maintain a copy of that, populate it with any activities which employers are involved in with your cohort of learners. You don't have to use that, but I think that it covers all the sections that we need to know. What kind of activity, when was it completed, who was the employer, but we do recommend that you use that. We used to ask for a copy of that planner prior to submission at the end of the academic year. We used to ask for a copy of it in January, but we no longer ask to see that. Just seeing a question there, the copy of the planner and trackers on that resources and support page that I showed you at the start of the presentation. On the technicals page on the website, there's resources and support, and you'll find a copy there. So yeah, we don't ask to see a copy of that planner early in the delivery period, but we will still be looking at it at the end of the year. What we are offering, though, if a centre would like reassurance that the activities that are being planned will meet the requirements, please feel free to submit a copy to us at Technical's Quality to review, and we can give you some feedback. Don't mind that at all. The reason why I'm accepting that, I'm happy to accept those documents to come to us for reassurance, is just that I have seen it at the end of the year where centres have, for example, the employer involvement activities are just around employers supporting with completing CVs, or some learners went to see an exhibition once. Now, this isn't getting employers involved in the delivery of the qualification, so it doesn't meet the meaningful requirement. If we have an oversight of it earlier in the year, if you want to have some reassurance of it, we can tell you whether it kind of meets that meaningful requirement. But I do encourage you to have a look at the guide that we have on the website. Lindsay, you've just popped in there. Is there a list of possible activities that could be used as work experience hours due to the difficulty of students getting the typical work experience hours at placement? Yeah, I mean, sorry, I might be misunderstanding the question, but the activities that you use as work experience, then due to the difficulty, is the list of possible activities that could be used as work experience hours. We don't have a list of activities that could be used as work experience hours, but it would be like work placements, work experience. If the qualification is land and animal, then is there a work placement at a zoo perhaps, or within a vet, whatever that employer can offer to support the learners and give them that real life experience of the qualification that they're doing. I don't know if that answers your question, Lindsay. Sam, I'll move on to yours. Does each individual mandatory unit require evidence of involvement? No, it's just for that qualification, Sam. So how have the employers been involved in the delivery of that qualification. For example, if there's, again, keep going back to hair and beauty, if it's a hairdressing qualification, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a work experience or work placement, but if you found a local employer who can come into the centre and do a demonstration on how to use various hair products, which directly relates to the delivery, the content of that qualification, then that meets a requirement for employer involvement as well. Again, really recommend you have a look at the employer involvement guidance if you want some further information on that. So yeah, I guess I'm covering what I've already got in the presentation here. So to be eligible, employer involvement activities must relate to the content of that qualification. It's quality assured by City and Guilds. It has happened in the past. There's a possible outcome that learners not meeting the requirements will not be able to achieve the qualification certificate because the DfE has provided examples of which activities are considered to be meaningful and count towards meeting that requirement. They've also provided examples that would be generally beneficial to learners but would not count towards meeting the requirement. And again, look in that guide. I'll give you the examples that are counted as meaningful. So learners undertaking structured work experience, work placements that develop the skills and knowledge that's relevant to the qualification. Learners could be undertaking projects, exercises, assessments and exams with input from industry practitioners. For example, mock exams, they could be doing their projects, their mock tests with input from industry practitioners. Learners could be doing the units delivered or co-delivered by somebody in the industry as well. So for example, masterclasses, guest lectures, industry practitioners operating as expert witnesses that contribute to the assessment of learners' work or practice operating within a specified assessment framework, maybe for specific project exercises or exams, or all assessments for the qualification. So basically you can see that it has to be relevant to the qualification and have those employers, those industry experts, is it directly relevant to what the learners are being taught, really?
We've just got Jo Young in the chat, Liz. She's just saying, how do you like work experience for individual students to be recorded on the employee involvement tracker? And can we state work experience and submit an overview of placements that have been carried out?
Yeah, you can, Jo. What we commonly see is that, we have the employers listed line by or group by group and say that these students have been on the placement at this employer. So you can just kind of highlight which learners. You'll see when you have a look at it how it's kind of set out, but it can be individually for students, or it could be cohort wide that all students have all attended 1 week placement at Billy's Horse Sanctuary, for 2 weeks, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I was going to say we've just got Shelley underneath who's just helped respond to a previous question. I don't know if that could be helpful for some people who've written earlier questions about work experience.
Yeah.
Sorry, the experience hours.
Yeah. So I believe that's referring to the work experience unit within Equine, then, is it, Shelley? Rather than the employer involvement. Yes, okay, thank you. Yeah, I would have a look. That's not in relation to this unit for employer involvement though, but yeah, you're right about I would have a word with the technical advisor B around that if you need any clarification on that work experience unit itself. I think you're right. I think that the work experience hours could be carried out within the colleges themselves, but I would really check in with that unit for, around with B Heard, the technical advisor. But for employer involvement itself, I need to keep separating these two out. You see, there's work experience for land-based that has a certain number of hours that they have to complete for it, and there's employer involvement for all technical qualifications. For Key Stage 5, I must repeat that, Key Stage 5 technicals. So there is the copy, an image of the employer involvement centre guidance that is on the website. I can't stress enough how important it is with the number of questions we're getting about this. Do have a really good look at that to understand what the requirements are for that. that's how it looks. The planner and tracker that we've provided on the website, what it has to be at a qualification level. 1 planner is required per qualification. You just populate the details of your centre in there, the academic year, etc. And you can see in the red section there, employer involvement activity 1, there's 6 different sections you can put details in for. So you can select the type of activity. For example, was it work experience, placement activities, guest lectures maybe? What is the type? Tell us the name of the company of the employer. Because of COVID, really, we have put the option in that it could have been a remote activity. Again, guest lectures, for example, you could have a Zoom call with an employer who's demonstrating something over video, really. So it depends on the situation, what you want to have that employer doing. Obviously, face-to-face is probably more beneficial. There's more opportunity for questions, for learning. But it is possible that you have some of your employer involvement activities that are remote. And then give us some details of how the employer was involved in the delivery, what the content was for this activity. So that's the planner. I do recommend that you get a copy of that and start to just populate it, get it ready, keep it up to date as the year progresses, because you might be able to add further involvement activities in there as you go on, so that you can submit that at the end of the year. Okay, so 2022, we are in that situation, aren't we, though, where the government's intention is that assessments for vocational and technical qualifications go ahead for 2021-22 as normal. In order to support all centres who offer the technical qualifications to help proactively mitigate against potential national, local impacts of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, we've got a guide to permitted adaptations for technical qualifications on the COVID-19 page, which looks like that. We obviously understand that learners who are taking these assessments have had significant disruption to their teaching and learning. They might need continued support in the face of any further disruption. So we recommend, as much as possible, go ahead as normal. But where you have difficulties, these adaptations, it does give you a guide. They're highlighted in blue there, technical qualifications guidance on that 2022 adaptations page. And that's what it looks like. That guide will help you with some clarity on what permitted adaptations there might be should you come across any problems, really. Sarah's just asked, when do we expect to hear back from Technical's quality team regarding suggested adaptations? We often reach out to the technical advisors to see whether some of the adaptations that are suggested would still meet the assessment requirements. We're not experts in qualification specifically, you see, so we do ask technical advisors, can you advise on this? So there might be a little bit of a delay in turning that around, but hopefully as soon as possible, really. If you've requested some input already, Sarah, chase it up, I would say, just in case we need to kind of get that answer from somebody else. But it should be as soon as possible. We will personally refer back to this document ourselves to understand what the permitted adaptations are. But if we aren't clear, like you are, then we'll ask the technical advisor or the assessment team on what's possible. So, I just see another question from Sarah. Just hold fire on that, Sarah. I'll come back to that. Adaptations for 22, though, some specific content within that guide are, some adaptations permitted within synoptic assignments, such as in relation to the delivery of that actual assignment. There could be some tasks that are taken remotely by learners, provided that they're supervised. And there's suitable software processes that maintain the security of the assessment materials, making sure that you've got the evidence that can be retained by the centre and that authenticates that the responses are the learner's own. So just basically that some things can be done remotely, but as long as we can be sure about the validity of that assessment and that the evidence was actually the learner's, then that adaptations are possible. Like I say, there's the option for some remote assessment for practical skills observations, depending on that qualification. So obviously not every qualification where there's practical elements can be done remotely. There is the option of merging some assignment tasks or streamlining tasks providing all the assessment criteria can be met and the marking grading of the tasks and assessments can be still accurately applied. There are adaptations permitted with optional units and mandatory standalone units, which are assessed by assignments as well. Again, going back to what I've just mentioned about employer involvement activities, they may be conducted remotely. It could be adapted to meet the requirements for that Key Stage 5 component. And perhaps there are some changes to the requirement for work experience hours to be completed. So again, have a look at that adaptations document if you're land-based technicals or healthcare and childcare technicals, because there are some changes to the number of hours that are permitted for work experience hours. And specific arrangements for land-based technical qualifications and the health and safety biology mandatory theory assessments and estate skills and machinery operation tasks. Really encourage you to go have a look at that document, read through it, see what is possible, because like I say, learners are still affected across the country when it comes to COVID. Sarah, going back to your question, thank you. I completed the form regarding the zoo route synoptic as we'd like to undertake 3D enclosure designs due to the small size of our collection. Okay, we'll chase that up then, Sarah. If you wouldn't mind just emailing Technicals Quality again, just to chase up on that. I would presume that this is something that we've had to refer to the assessment or the industry team for some clarity on. Okay, so I'll whiz through the key dates. Hopefully you'll all know these. I won't go line by line through this, but you can see that learner registrations, technicals are always the academic cycle, aren't they? Learners need to be registered within a couple of months at the start of the academic year. After that date, really it impacts us quite a lot because of the bookings. But so learner registrations are open on the 6th of September. You can see further down that on the 29th of October, the learner registrations closed. And within this period as well, there has been an opportunity for centres to query the synoptic assignments and ask for some clarification. That was open from the 13th until the 29th of October, 13th of September to the 29th of October. That gave centres a chance to look at the synoptic assignments, get your heads around it. Does it make sense? Is there anything that you need some clarification on? Because what you have now on the website is not the final synoptic assignment that you'll be using with your learners in the spring, because it's highly likely that we'll probably need to revise it depending on the clarification, the feedback that we get from centres. But you can see on the 1st of December, the finalised synoptic assignments are on the qualification web pages. So only really go and access those synoptic assignments from the 1st of December when you've got the finalised version, following feedback, following clarification that we've had from centres. We might need to update it somewhat. On the 10th of December, the booking window closes for all of the spring exam series, any synoptic assignments, the optional units, basically all components except for the summer exams. So the spring exams is included in this, but not in the summer exams. All bookings need to have been received by the 10th of December. It's for me and my team, this is really important, that you've got your heads around what assignments, components your learners need to be booked onto. It really impacts us quite a lot, and you'll find us across the year, we'll constantly be asking questions. Have you booked your learners? We haven't received bookings for this unit from your centre. We need the delivery teams to communicate with whoever makes those bookings, because we need bookings to understand a couple of things really. Which centres we need to arrange moderator visits for, which is coming up in the presentation, and also we need to be able to see those on the moderation portal. If you don't book your learners, you won't be able to submit their grades and their evidence for them. So you need to do that by the 10th of December. I know that seems early, but like I say, it impacts us because we have to arrange and plan for moderators. So on the 4th of January, the synoptic tasks can be given to learners, depending on whether you want to start that synoptic assignment at that time. Obviously, can be from the 4th of January, but it goes on throughout that whole synoptic assessment period. Okay. Jane, just going back to your question in the chat there, the adaptations guide is on the COVID-19 page on the website. So, okay, further dates for delivery. We have the exam series that takes place in February and March. It depends on which qualifications. There's a first spring exam series and a second spring exam series. Take a look again at the qualification handbooks, the catalogue on the website. I'll show you also another document which details the dates of the exams, so you know when those exams need to take place. For 8202, the electrical and plumbing exams, it's slightly different. It's a little bit later, from the 29th to the 1st of April. The results of these spring exam series is released 25th of April, and the 9th of May, 16th of May for the electrical and plumbing. And the deadline for booking the exam series, should your learners want to attempt that exam again, or if they've failed or they didn't do the original spring exam, that opens on the 20th of May. Sorry, that you need to get the bookings completed by the 20th of May.
Sorry, Liz, we've just got Emma White is just asking in the chat. So the next November exam results are out until the 12th of Jan. Should the book all learners and then withdraw them if they do not need to resit in March?
Yeah, it is one of those overlaps that we have. What I would say is I would book them, yeah, if you have that additional opportunity to book them on, and then, yeah, withdraw them if you don't need that. That's what I would recommend for that, yeah, Emma.
And we have another question saying, I have booked theory exams for level 2 and 3 for plumbing, bricklaying and carpenter joinery on wall garden, but when I check the orders, the bookings have been rejected. Could this be looked into, please?
Yeah, Fazal, what I would recommend, again, Technicals Quality is not responsible for the bookings and registration side of things. We do have access to see them, but we don't know what has happened when it comes to orders on wall garden. So I would contact Centre Support with that query, Fazal.
Apologies to Kimberly Wallace because I skipped past your question. So Kimberly asked, when do the modified paper requests need to be submitted by for the spring technicals?
I would get that so that goes to the policy for any requests. Once I would get that request in now, really, if you want to. It needs to be prior to the exam. I think policy might prefer it when it's a bit closer to the exam so that they can see the centres that they're dealing with. But I would just send it in once you've made your booking and you can say which learners need to have that authorised, then you can get that in, Kimberly.
And then we have got Helen Harvey, who is asking, do we know when the October resit exam results are published, please?
Yes, we do know. I don't have that on this presentation. It's on the website. Let me get back to you, Helen. Sorry, Hannah, would you mind taking note of Helen's name there? We can pop her an email.
Of course, can, yep.
Yep.
Got Helen. And then finally, we've got Zoe Yates, who is just asking, why are the electrical and plumbing theory exams early this year? As the Ian Gill's aware that this is difficult to deliver all units properly before those exam dates. I don't know if you got that one, Liz.
Oh, sorry, I was muted there. Apologies.
Oh, it's all right.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the exact reasoning behind that. Again, when it comes to specifics around the qualifications, there have been decisions made within the assessment teams as to determine the dates that they've chosen. I would have a chat with the technical advisor specifically for that if you want to pick that up, Zoe. I'll give you a list of the technical advisors at the end of this presentation if you want to get in touch. And Fazal, I did contact Centre Support. Was told either the exam has not been attached to the qualification or the exam expired before the exam date. Okay. Sorry, just Sarah, one of our technical advisors, added some further information in there. Fazal, again, I do apologise. When it comes to the bookings of exams and the registrations, etc., all I can say is contact Centre Support for those kind of queries. Apologies for that. And Sarah, our technical advisor for hair and beauty, is on this call, and she's kindly, thank you so much, Sarah, for provided the dates of the exam series results available to centres. Level 3, oh, I'm trying to read that. It hasn't come out all that easily within the chat there, Sarah. But what I'll do is make sure that, Helen, you do get the date of that October reset exam result emailed to you if we need it. Right, sorry, moving on, still have another date, another slide with the dates for delivery. So yeah, 20th of May is a big one for all centres. It's the level 2, level 3 synoptic assignments, the deadline for submitting all of the marks, all of the evidence for all of the learners doing that. Now, so obviously if you've got a plan that a learner is completing a synoptic assignment, make sure that by the 20th of May, you've got their marks uploaded onto the moderation portal along with the evidence that's needed for them. You can do it beforehand. You'll have access to the moderation portal before the 20th of May. So what I would recommend is don't leave it to the last day, if at all possible. So then you have a summer exam series starting on the 6th of June. On the 17th of June, you'll see it's a few weeks later. We give you a few weeks just so that you can pull together any further evidence that you need. But there's also the outcomes and evidence for optional assignments, the mandatory components, any other centre assessed components, the employer involvement. So synoptics need to be submitted on the 20th of May, but anything else is the 17th of June, okay? And then on the bottom there, the last 4 boxes, you can see the results days. So I've just updated this recently because they've changed. So if you weren't already aware, the dates have changed for when we release the results. Level 3 has been moved to the 17th and 18th of August. So obviously centres will get the results on the 17th, but they mustn't be released to learners until the 18th. For level 3, and for level 2, similarly, centres will get the results on the 24th, mustn't be released to learners until the 25th. And they are obviously, as you can see, the level 3 and level 2, they're in line with the A-level and GCSE results days. I've got the asterisk there, subject to change. It has changed. You might have looked at this a couple of weeks ago. We had different dates. I can't see this changing again, but what I would always say is just keep checking, just in case there are any changes to results days and things. On the website as a key dates, technicals checklist, I would really recommend you having a look. This is in the resources and support, and I find this quite visually quite useful. You can use this, you can print it out, you know, pin it to your wall, put it on your desktop, whatever you want to do, but this is quite a useful checklist for you to keep an eye on as the months progress. You know, where are you? You can see there on the 10th of December under the December section, that's your booking window. In the August section there, that's all been updated again recently, the 17th, 18th, 24th, 25th of August with the results dates. Just a really good checklist for you to use. Recommend you print it out and use it. I mentioned about exam series and the dates for the exams. There is this document that you can use. You can also just find out the dates of the exams through the walled garden catalogue, by the way, but there is a document that you can use with the timetable of all the exams. Again, that's on the resources and support page on the website. Timetables, but listed by industry area. The booking window opened on the 1st of October for booking your exams, closes on the 10th of December. The exams are available either as a paper-based exam or as an Evolve exam. Some are only on paper because of the nature of the exam content, and on-demand exams are not available, and all exams are dated entry. They all take place on a specific day.
There's just a question there, sorry, from Angela, just saying, are there restricted results release dates for the spring series?
They do get released on a specific date, yeah. Again, going back to those key dates that I've just shown you there, you as a centre will find out the results on a specific date. and it's not restricted in terms of releasing those to learners in the same way it is for those results in the August period. But as soon as you get the outcomes of those exam results, you can release that. You can tell your learners those outcomes. So for please note on the bottom of this page, don't forget that when it's an exam, they do need to be invigilated according to JCQ, the instructions for conducting exams. So they are controlled exams. They're subject to invigilation and JCQ requirements. Just aware of time, I still have quite a few slides to get through. I'm only halfway through at the moment. So I'm just going to try and go a little bit quicker here. I'll try and hold back on some of the questions because we are getting a lot as we're going forward here. So different styles of exams within technicals. So yeah, Synoptic Assignment is a dated entry booking. So it's dated entry because of how the deadline date for final submission to the moderation portal. Don't get confused, by the way, when you see a date for the Synoptic Assignment, when you're booking it that says 20th of May. That's not the date that you do the Synoptic Assignment with the learners. That's just the date they submit everything to us. You've got all through the spring to conduct that Synoptic Assignment, really. There's always one theory exam. Again, dated entry must take place on that date for that exam, though. So if the exam date is the 2nd of March, it has to take place at that date and time on the 2nd of March. So they're available as dated entry written papers as well as evolve multiple choice exams. And again, the different dates that you'd see for booking the components for mandatory and optional units and employee involvement, again, they're dated entry booking, so you'll see that the date for those units is the 17th of June, because that's the date that you have to submit everything by on the moderation portal. That's a deadline date for final submission, but it doesn't mean that you have to conduct those assessments on that date. You have to conduct it, across the whole period of the year, really, gathering the evidence, assessing the learners for the optional units, but submitting the evidence and the grades onto the moderation portal is the 17th of June. So when you're looking at the catalogue, this is specifically really for, I presume within centres you'll have people who will be responsible for making these bookings. So delivery teams often don't make the bookings, don't make the registrations. But for those of you in the admin teams, each qualification has those rules of combination. Find it on the catalogue page. There it is, highlighted in blue. When you look at it, you can use an interactive tool if you like to try and figure out whether the minimum number of credits that need to be met, for that to meet that rule of combination, has been met. So each pathway, some qualifications have multiple pathways. Keep going back to animal management. You have zoos, you have science pathways. Not every qualification has that. So the technical awards, the certificates don't have those pathways, but the larger qualifications do. So take a look at that and make sure you can figure out which units need to be entered for those learners to meet that rule of combination. Again, it's structured differently. Each unit is structured within walled garden, as in what you'd see. I'm just trying to highlight here that when you look on walled garden to see the different units, you can see that, I know it might be very small on your screen, but it says what type of unit they are, whether the theory exam is multiple choice, whether the theory exam is a written exam. So the unit type signifies how the assessment will be marked. When it says moderated, it means that it's marked within the centre. Marks and a sample of evidence are to be uploaded to the moderation portal for moderation. If it says multiple choice and written, it's an exam, it's a type of exam, may be available on paper or online. External quality assurance means that it's marked within the centre, and then grades and a sample of evidence need to be uploaded to the moderation portal to be verified. So those are your optional units that come through with the unit type of external quality assurance. Do have a look at the handbook for a full listing of all the unit criteria. So don't get confused between when you look at the handbook and it says that the qualification structure has various units within it. Not all of those units will be on walled garden for you to book. So if you're teaching a qualification, there's always the mandatory teaching units. As you can see there, the qualification structure for hairdressing, you've got the principles and practices of hairdressing, barbering, you've got shampooing, you've got cutting hair, styling, setting and dressing hair. They're mandatory teaching units, but we don't have those units within it that you have to book to assess shampooing, to assess cutting hair. They're all combined within the theory exam or within the synoptic assignment, because that's assessed and marked holistically, isn't it? So just to highlight that, when you're looking at the handbook, try and differentiate between what you need to be teaching and which units you need to be booking the learners on for assessment. Just going back to a large qualification like the 017233, which is animal management, there are different pathways with different units, different rules of combination. On the left image here, that's a zoos pathway. So there are different units within the zoos pathway than there are for the science pathway. Again, really important when you've got a learner in the second year of one of these large qualifications, really familiarise yourself with the units that they need to complete. As an example here on this screen, on the bottom line of the image on the left, it says 4 assignments for optional units 308, 309, 312, blah, blah, blah. And that's for the zoos pathway. But on the right-hand side, we have the science pathway saying 4 assignments for optional units 308 to 310. So on the left-hand side, there isn't the option to do unit 310 as part of that pathway. But on the right-hand side, for the science pathway, they can select unit 310. So when booking your assessments for a technical with pathways, please make sure that you only book the required assessments for that pathway. I've made a note saying booking any additional incorrect assessments may cause problems with the certification process. It does cause confusion if your learner is doing the zoos pathway on the left-hand side here, but you've booked some units that are only applicable to the science pathway. It causes a lot of confusion. So just try and make sure that you've got the learners booked for the assessments that they need to do for that pathway.
Just a quick one, Liz, because I know we're a little bit behind. Just who uploads the marks onto the grade submission portal? Will it be the exam team or the course leader?
Thanks, Anna. Right, so that depends on your centre, Fazal. Depends on, I'll come on to the moderation portal shortly. Just going briefly into it, by the way, I'm not going into a huge amount of depth, but it depends on who has been set up with a marker account on the moderation portal. If you want to have a a marking account for that, then whoever has overall responsibility for the moderation portal in your centre can set you up with one. So some centres ask their admin teams to do it, and the delivery team will ask the admin team, here's all of my documents that have been scanned, can you upload them onto the moderation portal, and the marks are this. Some centres ask their markers to be doing it, that they have access, and to be fair, that's probably the better route of doing it, because the markers know what marks they've given, make sure those marks are against the correct learners, make sure the right evidence is there against those learners. So yeah, that's how it works. Oh, and Fazal, you've just said we normally use S forms to submit non-technical quals. Will it be the same? No, it's completely different. No S forms at all for technical qualifications. It's all through the moderation portal. Oh. Okay, so there are some qualifications where learners can step up, such as from a 540 one-year qualification, 540 guided learning hours, to a 2-year 1080 guided learning hours. Now, if that happens where a learner has been doing the 540 in the first year of, if they're in year 12 and they're doing the 540, but they say to themselves, you know what, actually, I really like to do the larger qualification, they can step up in that second year, but you have to make sure that they're registered a second time onto that larger qualification. And you have to make sure that all the assessments under that larger qualification need to be booked for them to be able to get that larger qualification, obviously. You don't have to repeat the other assessments that fall within the smaller qualification, but you do have to make sure that the employer involvement, because they are different between those two qualifications. I know it sounds pernickety, it is a processing thing really, that the unit number for employer involvement is different. We need to just make sure that they get the unit for that higher qualification. But come to us if you have any questions about stepping up learners who want to move on to a larger qualification. Okay, so recommended reading. Really encourage you to have a look on this resources and support page on the website. We've got that section about a guide to booking assessments. This is the area that I keep referring you back to, the resources and support. There's a drop down for teaching and learning resources, and there's your guide for booking assessments. And I would also recommend, if you are responsible for booking those assessments, join this, well, as I say join, watch this webinar that's been recorded previously. That will help you with that. And Rachel, you've just said, if a learner completed their original qual at a different institution, do they still not need to book the previous assessments? No, if they've already achieved that, again, this is something that you'd need to pick up with centre support, because of how that previous registration would probably be at that other institution. But really, when we need to kind of merge the two, don't we? The registration from that previous institution and the new one that you'll have. So that's something that you need to pick up with centre support. Yeah, if you want that learner to be stepping up there, Rachel. Okay, moderation visits. So we're at the stage in the year now. I keep telling you about booking assignments, booking assessments. It really helps us when we're planning the moderation visits. So technical qualifications have ephemeral evidence as a significant part of the assessment and evaluation of their performance. So it's really important when tutors are doing that practical assessment that the quality of the evidence is really collected really effectively. So for qualifications with this ephemeral evidence, this is kind of like, we call it fleeting evidence that you can't get at a later stage. So for example, hospitality and catering qualifications where it's a dish being made, and you obviously you aren't able to tell the quality of that meal, that dish 5 weeks later when a moderator looks at evidence on the moderation portal. So it's really important that we do get an idea of the quality of the evidence that's being collected for some qualifications, and we support the end of year online moderation of learners' work through a visit from the moderator, and that will take place in the spring. It's only for specified qualifications, however. We do have further guidance of this in the Marking Moderation Centre guide on the website. But the qualifications that do need a visit are across hair and beauty. So you can see here hairdressing, you've got barbering, media makeup, theatrical, special effects, beauty therapy, nail treatments, hospitality and catering, a few qualifications there. The BSc qualifications, your bricklaying, site carpentry, joinery, painting, decorating, plastering, electrical installation and plumbing. Animal care, land-based qualifications, so animal care, animal management, land-based engineering, equine. Then horticulture, forestry and arboriculture, floristry, agriculture, land and wildlife. These all do need a moderator visit. So if you're responsible for any of those sectors, we will be in touch and be asking a moderator to go to your centre. So what is it? The objective is so that the moderator can observe and ensure that the evidence that you're gathering by the tutors during that practical element, that's sufficient, that's valid, reliable enough to support any of the later marking or moderation. So it's very difficult for a moderator to remotely in May and June to be looking at the evidence that's uploaded to make sure that the evidence is sufficient, really, when it's, like I say, that ephemeral evidence is collected, you know, the quality of that meal, the quality of a haircut, you know, how well a learner has built a wall for bricklaying. You know, it's about making sure that the evidence that is being collected and the notes of practical observations are sufficient. The moderator will independently collect their own evidence as well, just make some notes when they're there at that centre. They'll give themselves a bit of a benchmark against which to compare the tutor produced notes and evidence. So especially this is where photographic evidence can't provide valid or complete backing to support the tutor evidence. So sometimes photographs aren't enough. A moderator is better off going to that centre, making some notes. It's a support visit. You know, when the moderator goes to centres, it's ensuring that any guidance and feedback on that evidence gathering and recording can be applied to that whole cohort. We attempt to, and we encourage centres to help us arrange visits as early as possible in the Synoptic assessment window. Now, once that visit has taken place, the moderators will write up a feedback report, and we'll send that to all centres. The technical quality team will send that to you. The centre IQA's lead markers are expected to make sure that any feedback is fed through all of the tutors and markers to make sure that the high quality evidence is there. That really does help the moderator at the end of the year. Centres must take this feedback into account before continuing their assessment and marking activity. That's why we want those visits to be as early as possible. If the visit isn't the very first Synoptic assignment cohort that you do, group of learners, then you might need to kind of backtrack and review the evidence collected previously, if you get what I mean. So that's why we do try to get the moderator there for the very first Synoptic practical assessment that you do with your learners. We should mention, though, it's important to note that the moderators, they can't give any feedback on the accuracy of your marking or to comment on whether the candidates are likely to pass or fail. They're just there to help you with that collection of evidence, to make sure that when you're making your notes in the practical observation forms, that is it good enough? Is it given enough evidence for the moderator? Are the photographs that you're taking, will that be good enough to provide? So yeah, the moderators are not there to say that this learner's, they're likely to pass or likely to fail. During that visit, moderators will work alongside but independently of the centre markers. They'll be observing the candidates, making their own notes. Once the sample is being observed, moderator will have a look at the evidence they've gathered, alongside the evidence gathered by the markers for those candidates, and they'll be looking at the marker notes, looking at the photographic evidence. Moderator will provide some feedback to the IQA or lead marker on various areas. So again, it's just about giving that support and that feedback to you about the evidence that is being collected for that practical component. So the moderator will be, advising whether the evidence produced by the assessors was appropriate for the task, focused on the right areas, maybe looking at the correct assessment objectives, whether the evidence collected by the learner and marker was sufficient, valid, appropriate quality to support the end of year moderation. Whether that evidence that's being collected provides clear descriptions of the performance and validates or justifies any subjective language, conclusions. What about that performance made it good or excellent? Because when the markers are making notes on their practical observation forms, you have to make it really clear, whether that learner is really good or was excellent at the task that they're being given, excellent at tidying up after themselves or cleaning up, for example. Whether markers and tutors are collecting evidence on learning performance across the full range of AOs, because that practical observation form, again, it covers all of them, doesn't it? It covers the application of knowledge, not just the practical element, but how do they apply their knowledge to that practical assessment task. The moderator will be giving some advice on whether additional evidence could be provided to give the moderator a clear review of the learner's performance. Some advice on the format of the notes, the nature of the supporting evidence, like photographs, whether they validly represent the candidate's work, and a comparison of the evidence gathered by different tutors and markers, highlighting examples of good and poor practice where that's relevant, of course, and any follow-up actions that the centre should take. So you can see that it's just about supporting you with gathering that evidence, making sure that the evidence that is being gathered for that practical task will really help the moderator at the end of year. And it's just about, seeing what is being gathered, the photographs. Are we getting enough of the right, valid, appropriate kind of quality of evidence? So what happens next? Well, we're obviously keeping an eye on the bookings that are coming in. The 10th of December, again, is the booking deadline for Synoptics. So once we know which Synoptic assessments are going to be taking place for which learners this year, we'll know that your centre will need to have that moderator visit. So we'll keep an eye on the data that's coming in. If we know that we need that visit for your centre, we'll provide the information to the moderator, and the moderator will contact the centre to establish the dates that you'll be doing the synoptic tasks, where that ephemeral evidence is being gathered, of course. We don't need the moderator to turn up for example, the preparation task or the task, the write-up task for the synoptic. It's just for that practical element. So the moderator will get in touch with the main contact person at your centre. That's why if a few of you might be getting calls from my team at the moment asking you for new contact update forms, we need to know the main contact person there so that we can put them in touch, put the moderator in touch with yourselves. The moderator will need to observe any practical task that generates that ephemeral evidence. We'll need to know the scheduling for that part of the assessment, along with who the markers are, who the IQAs, the standardization leads are. And the moderator will send you a visit sample form to confirm that date, who's going to be part of it. We also need to know which candidates are going to be observed. It's a bit like if you know the PA1 and the CA1 process for regular qualifications. It's just getting the moderator in touch with the centre and planning this visit. So moderator should ideally observe a sample to include the range of markers. So if you do have more than one marker for the synoptic, try and include a good range of staff to be there as part of it, so that the moderator can, support with giving you some feedback on all of that. And some advice: moderators, there's a sample size for if they go visit. They'll ask to observe a minimum of 6 candidates. If you've got fewer than 6, then all of those learners, so if you've only got 4 learners, then let's involve all learners in that visit. Now the group should ideally include candidates across the range of performance. So again, if you've got more than 6 and you've got 50 candidates, then try to include, when the moderator attends, try to include a range of performance. A candidate who you think is going to be on the lower end, a candidate who's going to be on the your highest achieving learner, and then a range of in between, just so that again the collection of evidence is relevant to all learners within that group. Centres can use predicted grades to evidence that you can predict how the learners might perform. So that's how we'd expect you to try and identify what the sample that the moderator would observe when they go in for that moderation visit. And yes, another point there about where there's more than one marker involved, ideally the group should include candidates marked by each marker. Okay, so you can see that when we get that moderation visit process in place, it's just for the moderator to go in and have a good oversight of the learners that will be partaking in the practical component. Again, just aware of time. Moderation portal, I will try and kind of whiz through this because we don't really need to know this at this stage, but I just want you to all be aware that the moderation portal, this is the platform on which you'll be putting your marks, your grades into us. So somebody mentioned earlier about S-forms, exception orders, not at all for technicals. Everything is through the moderation portal where you enter your marks, your evidence, the grades for optional units, and because it's subject to moderation. Now, every centre will have a moderation portal account. There's one core account for each centre, and upon release of the moderation portal, you'll get one set of login credentials. That's the admin account per centre. So if, again, that contact update form I mentioned earlier, we ask for the details of the person who's responsible for the moderation portal. Sometimes it's the main contact at the centre. Sometimes other people are nominated to be responsible for the moderation portal. But whoever has that main responsibility for your centre, they will create other accounts for markers, assessors, to be able to input marks and upload evidence. the guide for that, I should point out, the guide is on the website. I will be doing some webinars in March and April because we haven't used the moderation portal for 2 years now. So I'll do some webinars in March and April just to help centres familiarise yourselves with the portal again. And Simon just spotted your question there. Yep, absolutely no S forms for construction quals. The technicals are all through the moderation portal. There's no claiming of any of the units through S forms exception orders. Just to be clear that it's just for technicals, of course, this. So moderation portal, the marks have to be uploaded onto the portal plus a sample of evidence. Deadlines, again, going back to the 20th of May, saying for synoptic assignments and the 17th of June for optional and centre assessed components and employer involvement, Key Stage 5. And I can't hammer this home enough, if possible, please. It's really important that the portal at the end of the year shows all candidates who've registered and have been booked through the walled garden for the qualifications. If you haven't booked the learners onto the units that they need to be submitting the grades for and claiming those grades for, they will not be on the moderation portal for you to enter their grades and claim them. So if you don't make those bookings, you won't be able to submit the marks and evidence to the moderator, and your candidates won't get that grade for the qualification. You have to make sure that those bookings are completed so that the learners will show on the moderation portal, and whoever's responsible in your centre to enter those marks, enter those grades, that you can do that. So again, I'm sorry for keep harping on about bookings, but it is very, very important. So prior to the marking moderation, so at this stage, we just need to make sure, again, candidates are registered, candidates are booked against all the relevant assessments, again, making sure that it's in line with the rules of combination on the catalogue. Contact update form, mentioned a couple of times. My team is currently contacting some centres that we haven't had this from for a year or so. So we need to know the main technicals contact and whoever is responsible for the moderation portal. So you'll be able to see on here that in the first section there, you've got the main technicals contact. That's commonly, but not always, the quality contact at a centre. And the moderation portal contact is, again, commonly the main person at that centre, but sometimes exams officers, for example, are nominated to be responsible for the moderation portal. And that person has full oversight of the portal for your centre, creating new staff accounts. The technicals quality team don't create those new staff accounts within your centre. We only create one central admin account. We also ask, I've made a note there, is an additional evidence contact on that contact update form. We ask for somebody who can be nominated to be available throughout July. Please just give us a name, email address, telephone number of somebody who in July can be, just in case we need to contact you. Maybe we need some more evidence, maybe there's been some issues. And as you know, throughout July, centres do close, and we find it very, very hard to get in contact, get in touch with some centres. So if we can just get that detail, just in case of emergency, really, or in case we need to just get further clarification or information from you. So yeah, it is important that we get this contact information just for us to set up the moderation portal and make sure that you're ready for it. And again, there's two different accounts of that admin account, the generic account that we create for each technical centre. There's one account per centre, admin account, and it's always just got the username that is the centre number, like 12345A. Whoever has that main account can create new users, manage existing users, markers, assessors who have access to that portal. But on that account, you can't input the marks or upload evidence. However, the marker accounts, when you've created further accounts for people within maybe the delivery teams or perhaps some administrators to help with the upload, you can create further marker accounts, and they're assigned, you have to assign them to the qualifications that you need to access. So, for example, you might need to set up a marker who will be uploading the marks and evidence for hairdressing, but a separate marker who would do the uploads for construction. So you can assign them to the qualifications within the portal. Like I say, I'm not going to go into too much depth on the moderation portal. There's no point at this stage, but I just want to help you prepare for it, and talking about the evidence to be submitted will also help with that. So when it comes to the Synoptic assignment, what needs to be submitted at the end of the year, we need every single candidate's marks who needs to be claiming for that at the end of the year. We need to see a representative sample of candidate evidence. So we need to see the complete assignments that the learners complete. And then there's also some forms that need to kind of support that Synoptic assignment. So not just the learner's evidence and the photos and the tasks that the learners have completed, but the practical observation form, the candidate record form. I'll come on to that in a second. I've got a list of them. There's also for centre assess components, again, we need, if you're claiming a grade, if you need a learner to have that grade for an optional or mandatory assessment, then we need those grades to be entered onto the portal. We need a representative sample of candidate evidence for just one of those units. And again, the forms that you'll be completing so that the moderator can take a look at those. And for the employer involvement component, again, I'll talk about it another time, but the employer involvement component, you need the candidate outcomes, so whether they've passed that component, the planner and tracker, and any evidence of that cohort, attendance registers, etc. Oh, that's what I've just said. So all the recording forms must be provided as well. So uploading onto the portal, it's a sample of the candidates. So if you have 12 or fewer candidates within your cohort of learners, you have to just upload all of them, all of their marks. Obviously, like I say, all marks must be uploaded, but the evidence, you have to, if you have 12 or few candidates, again, it's all evidence for those. That's the minimum sample size that a moderator would look at. If you have between 30 and 100 learners, still upload all of their marks. Obviously, you need to get their marks in, because otherwise we won't apply a mark for that candidate. But the sample of evidence just has to be for 12 of those candidates. Just the sample must include the highest marked and the lowest marked candidate work. So if you've got 100 learners, you put in 100 marks for all of those learners. But for the highest marked learner, if they've got a learner who's got, really high achieving, that maybe they've got 60 out of 60 that you've marked them as, that candidate needs to have their evidence uploaded. And likewise for the lowest marked candidate. And in between, for those 12 the further 10 candidates out of that sample, give us a range of the others as well. Give us a few that are in the 30s, a few that are in the 40s. If the numbers of learners are between 101 and 200, we need 15. And if you've got more than 200 learners, we need 20 pieces of evidence for those learners. So have a think about, when you're uploading those marks and evidence, the inclusion of work by marked by all markers across the assignment. If you've got more than one marker, if you've got one marker who's marking 150 of those learners and you've got another marker who's only done 10, then obviously we want to see more of that marker who's done more marking. That should be reflected in the makeup of the sample that you provide. Include any candidates that have been observed during that visit as well, please, so that the moderator can then reflect on the complete Synoptic assignment. And evidence from any candidates that have been identified on a personal interest form needs to be included in addition to that sample. So even though you've got 12, a minimum of 12 that need to be uploaded, if there's one that there's personal interest around, that is, maybe there's a relative or that they've got some kind of personal interest with one of the delivery team, then we need to see that the candidate separately, their evidence in addition. So all the documentation that's needed to be submitted, it's internal documentation that you'll be documenting, that you'll be collecting. So there's practical observation form. That's used by markers and tutors to record the detailed evidence of the candidate's performance. There's a candidate record form. That's for you to calculate and record the marks how you've applied those marks across the assessment objectives, and to put your remarks as to why you've given that mark for that AO. There's a declaration of authenticity. So like all qualifications, just declaring that it is that student's own work, and also has a section on documenting any additional support that a candidate may have had. A centre standardisation declaration form. So, have you undertaken some internal standardisation of the marking if there's more than one marker for that assessment? How have you standardised? Have you standardised across the markers? And again, that personal interest form. So where if there's a learner, if there's a marker with the personal interest in the candidate, should I say, so for example, a parent or other relation, then we need to know that those candidates have been uploaded separately, and we need to know that that has happened. So I've highlighted on the screen now on the right hand side where the copies can be found. I'll show you in a second as well. On the qualification page, the PO form, the candidate record form, and the declaration of authenticity are actually on the qualification pages next to the Synoptic assignment material. And the generic forms like the standardisation, the personal interest form, are back on that resources and support under generic forms. I'll just go on to this.
So we've just got Liz, Sharon asking, does a sample size for learners based on total for qual or total for the year, e.g. 1080, first year numbers and final year taken separately to work out sample size?
Yeah, good question, Sharon. I think what you're asking really is it across the cohort of learners on that assessment, or is it per qualification? So if you're talking about that 1080 qualification, you'll know that the assessment itself can be delivered, a learner might be registered on to different actual pathways, different qualifications, but they're all doing the same synoptic assessment. It's down to the numbers of candidates on that assessment rather than on that qualification. So yeah, for example, I keep going back to the 0172 30, 31, 32 and 33, where the first year synoptic is the 030, and you might have learners registered on all those different qualifications but doing the same synoptic. Then the sample needs to reflect that synoptic alone, if that makes sense. Tell me if that doesn't clarify your question though, Sharon. So yeah, going back to where the documentation is. So on the website, the recording forms, if you go into the qualification pages, this one here is the media makeup. The recording forms can be found alongside all of the, thanks Sharon, just noticed your answer. The recording forms can be found next to the synoptic assignments. That's the practical observation, the candidate record form, the declaration of authenticity. But any generic forms that are not specific to any one qualification, they're on that teaching and learning resources again. There it is, the generic forms. And that's your personal interest form if you've got somebody related to one of the candidates, for example, and the standardisation declaration form. So the evidence requirements, I do sometimes feel a little bit pedantic when we go through this. Just need to, excuse me, I'm just going to cough a second. We need you to kind of just remember that at the end of the year, when we upload the evidence for the moderator to look at, think of how it comes across to the moderator in terms of downloading it and their access to that evidence. We ask that if you can, although it's not the end of the world, but if you can, try and keep all the documents together within a single file where possible. For example, scan all of those tasks all into one file to upload instead of having 15 individual documents that are uploaded, if that makes sense. Trying to clearly label the evidence for the tasks as well within that document, or actually as that file is uploaded as well, try and label it so that it's clear for the moderator what is within that. On the right hand side, you can see all the different formats that you can use for Windows and for Mac. They're all accepted on the right. To be fair, I would say everything that you normally use will be accepted. You've got JPGs, MP3s for audio, WAV files. video files, whatever the evidence you need to upload, it's likely that it will be acceptable. There is a maximum, I think it's 150 megabytes. So I have seen it in the past where, for example, an equine qualification videos are an hour long. We don't need hour-long videos. We just need it to be a video, a snip that really identifies what they're trying to cover within that task, if you know what I mean. So just think about the size of the evidence that you might be providing. Again, photos and images. What we sometimes see is blurry photos, dark photos. It's not very useful to have that for a moderator. It needs to be clear, fully display the evidence that's required. Anything that doesn't show fine details should be discarded. Like I say, I feel like I'm being quite pedantic when I say this, but it does really help the moderator if the photographs are clear, for them to understand, to be able to see that evidence clearly. And documents scanned in should be checked for clarity. Handwritten documents, think of moderators trying to read it and make out what's there. It doesn't have to be typed. It does help if you can type it, but handwritten is perfectly acceptable as long as it can be read. And if you do some of the construction quals, you've got drawings and sketches that are needed. So try and think about them being scanned in and being produced in dark pencil or pen. So I think you get the idea. Things to consider: the lighting, clarity of image. Do you need to have a full length photo to provide that evidence? Sometimes for media makeup or for the theatrical qualifications that you do need like a full length image that's provided. And oh yeah, a helpful tip, what we do see is quite useful, is that photographs could be just copied and pasted within a Word document with annotations. It doesn't have to be individual photos as a file. You can just put the photograph into a Word document and then label it, task 2 results of hair color. That is, good practice really. Right, I've only got 3 minutes left. I'm just going to quickly run through communicating with your moderator. So moderators they might need to ask for additional evidence if that evidence at the end of the year isn't sufficient, or where evidence is missing. It could be for individual candidate records, the whole cohort of learners. The moderator will be in touch with you and let you know what's missing via email. It could be because it was missing from the original upload, and maybe they need to extend their sample, needs to see work from additional learners. But overall, communicating with your moderator, there's only really 2 stages of the year where a moderator will be in touch, and that's around the moderation visits and around the remote moderation of uploaded evidence. The moderator isn't a person to refer to across the period of the year. That's what the technical quality team is here for, the technical advisors. So it's only really at these 2 stages that a moderator will be in touch with you. If a centre has had a visit from City and Guilds moderator during the spring, the same moderator will be allocated for the final moderation process. However, it's not always possible. Just often it's logistically for us to do that, but we will provide centres where we can. Hopefully we can do this for all centres, a list of the moderators and their contact information as well. And moderators will be provided with your contact details, the main centre contact for technicals, and all communication will be done via that main contact. And moderators will only contact centres if there's a requirement for further evidence or to discuss a query or question with you. If you do communicate with your moderator, it has to be through telephone or email, please. You might see on the moderation portal a messages function, but it's not monitored, it's not functional, messages won't be picked up, so it is just telephone or email for moderators. Just spotted a question. Someone's lost sound, so hopefully I'm still being heard. But a final question there: is it possible to send data entries by EDI, and what do we do if we experience issues with submitting files? I've emailed centre support and haven't had a response. Thanks, Kelly. Just said you can still hear me. Data entries by EDI, you can do that if you're booking, Julie. If you're booking the units, if you're making your registrations, you can do that through EDI. If you're thinking about submitting files or submitting any results on the moderation portal, no, it's one by one for uploading your learners' marks and evidence. I hope that helps your question there. And in the last minute, so I am rushing through. I do apologise, but further resources, 100%. I cannot stress this enough. There's tons of resources on our website. We've got events and webinars. There's a really, really highly recommended 4-part audio presentation by some principal moderators. Helps you, really recommend you have a look at this. It's so useful. I have learned from this myself. Bite-sized webinars illustrating common pitfalls, as well as giving recommendations for best practice. So you've got 4 there. I can see on the bottom of the screen: delivery of the Synoptic, evidence for the Synoptic Assessment, marking and standardization, submission to the moderation portal. There are also tons of videos aimed to support you. These have all been delivered specifically by moderators. These are again on the website in the events section. You'll be able to find them there. Really can't recommend enough you have a look at these. And finally, the contact details. I'll leave this for a second, but you've got technical advisors for each of the industry areas. Do 100% get in touch, please do. If you've got any questions about the qualification themselves, about the assessments, get in touch with a technical advisor who are, as the name suggests, they are technically, they're in the industry teams. They've helped with the development of these qualifications. They know them inside and out. So do get in touch with them. And just another second, you might be wanting to make a note. And finally, I will refer you back to, again, the Technicals Quality team. That's my team. Do get in touch, please do. I'd rather you get in touch and ask a silly question than not get in touch at all. So all the information is there on the screen: technicals.quality@cityandguilds.com, 0300 303 5352. And we're there to support. And even if we need to take some time to get an answer to you, we will get an answer to you. Okay. Now I have run over. I don't know, I think you've probably all been asking questions as we've gone on, but I do have a section here for questions and answers if anyone wants to pop a really quick question in. But otherwise, I don't want to hold you back any longer than we need to. Emma has said, could City and Guilds maybe set up a web page or Facebook page for centres to get advice, help from each other? I struggle to get an IQA to standardise my work every year. As the only teacher in my department, we would like to pay someone to support our centre. Emma, I'll get in touch with you. You know, we have been doing a series of standardisation advisory activities for centres, where principal moderators have been going out in this autumn. We've been arranging those for some centres. I'll get in touch with you directly, Emma. I've just made a note again for you there. Okay, like I say, I don't want to hold you back any longer, but those of you who have participated, I really appreciate it. At the end of this, once you log off, if you wouldn't mind just completing the survey, I do ask a couple of questions. I would love to have your input in how useful this webinar has been. But otherwise, thank you all for attending, and I hope it's been useful, and do get in touch if you need us, okay?
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye.